Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances always to Srila Prabhupada, always to your holiness. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you for joining. Please accept my humble obeisances always to Srila Prabhupada and always to our Guru Maharaj. Today Guru Maharaj is going to enlighten us with the topic of the process of devotional service, and it's Caitanya-caritamrta, Madhya-lila, 22nd chapter, 114 verse onwards. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. You can take over the call whenever you are ready, Guru Maharaj. I'll just share the screen.
Has any of the devotees done in this particular chapter since we stopped last week?
Yes, Guru Maharaj, one second.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Guru Maharaj, your voice is little blur. It's not very clear, but I'm trying to understand what you are saying.
I have my microphone somehow. Has any of the devotees done any of the verses on this chapter since I stopped?
No, Guru Maharaj, nobody took this one. You stopped. We are just continuing where you stopped, Guru Maharaj. Nobody took that.
Okay. Okay, so what, 114?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, 114.
Guru Maharaj, sorry to interrupt you, but your voice is not very clear, Guru Maharaj. It's like echoing when you are talking.
Let me see if I can find my. Let me see if I can find my cable here. Let's try this. What's that?
No, Guru Maharaj, still it's the same.
But I can't find it. I'll see if I can find this other cable. Is my voice clear and not loud?
Not at all, Guru Maharaj. It's like echoing when you are talking. It's not very clear.
Sound?
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I'm connected. I can see the verse. I can hear you.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Can you just try one more time disconnecting and connecting again, Guru Maharaj, into Zoom?
That's right. Hang on.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Thank you.
Krishna.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. I feel the voice is a little bit clear, but not very fully clear, Guru Maharaj.
Let's try to speak loud without help.
Yeah.
If I speak loud without help.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, but yeah, we can try for some time, Guru Maharaj. We'll see how it goes.
What are you hearing? What are you hearing?
Voice is kind of like shaky, and it's not cutting off, Guru Maharaj, and it's blurry. It's like
unclear.
unclear. Yeah.
Says, all right, I'm going to try to do it through the phone. Let me see if I can do it. Tap to speak.
That's it. Hare Krishna, how's that?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Now it's very better. Yeah, it's very good, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. I have to. Okay, I can use this to see the verse.
Yes, and you just hear it from here. That's it.
Okay. Okay. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktarinda Vividanga Sarna Bhaktira Bahuta Vistara Sangsepa Kahiya Kinchu Saranaga Shara. Translation. I shall say something about the various practices of devotional service, which is expanded in so many ways. I wish to speak briefly on the essential practices. Guru Prasadasraya Diksha, Guru Ras Sevana, Sadharma Shiksha Pricha, Saru Marganuga Mana. Translation. On the path of regular devotional service, one must observe the following items. 1, one must accept a bona fide spiritual master. 2, one must accept initiation from him. 3, one must serve him. 4, one must receive instructions from the spiritual master and make inquiries in order to learn devotional service. 5, one must follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas and follow the directions given by the spiritual master. So in Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he mentions the 64 items that must be applied in order for one to execute devotional service. And those 64 items, there are 44 that are vidis, are things to do, and 20 of them are nishedas, things to avoid. Here we begin. Om Gyan Timidandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya De Satarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Pevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. How's the audio now? Still good?
Yes, Guru Maharaj, it's very good.
Okay. All right. So in Rupa Goswami's delineation of the 64 principles, he begins at the beginning. And that is, these are 5 principles that are connected with one's relationship with the spiritual master. Here we see one must accept a bona fide spiritual master. Sometimes we call that aspiring for a particular spiritual master and working under his guidance in a less formal way. Once in the Hari Bhakti Vilas by Srila Sanatana Goswami, he explains that in this first principle, there is mutual testing between the guru and the disciple, wherein the guru observes the disciple and seeing if they are up to the standard in their black practice and are showing sincerity in their execution of their activities. In other words, if they're enthusiastic. After, and his disciple also tests the seer spiritual master by asking relevant questions, getting guidances, to see if this particular person is the person I want to surrender my life to. Because that's what it means to become a disciple. A disciple means that they are connecting with Krishna through the spiritual master. And that connection has to be free from any, what we say, secondary motivations. The motivation is to become Krishna conscious. And to become Krishna conscious means to carefully follow the directions and instructions of the spiritual master. When that is clear, at least for at least a minimum of 1 year, and both are satisfied with each other, then number 2 is enunciated, and that is one can accept initiation. It's called Diksha. It's one of the samskaras. There are 16 samskaras. And Upanaya Samskara is the main one of the main ones, where it's required that Atato Brahma Jigyasa, in the human form of life, one should inquire into the nature of the absolute truth, ask relevant questions, get relevant answers, apply those answers in a practical way, and develop one's relationship with Krishna through following carefully the spiritual master's instructions. That really leads to the third one. After one is initiation, one must serve the spiritual master. So this is sometimes a little bit dubious, not dubious, but a little bit unclear. What does it mean to serve the spiritual master? Well, there are 2 aspects to that. One is that the spiritual master has projects and various types of programs that he is working on, and he includes his disciples to help him with these preaching projects, these development projects. That is one way. And the other way is that the guru is somewhat distant from the spiritual master by geographical location. And they serve the spiritual master by serving his representative, the local temple authorities. So in both ways, this covers this particular point here. One must serve the spiritual master like that. And there is a cooperation between the temple authorities and the spiritual master, and how to raise up and give connection to the disciple in such a way that the disciple knows where they are in spiritual life and how they can make further advancement. Unfortunately, we don't have that fabric developed. Just like I have so many disciples and others, gurus also have disciples. They don't know what their disciples are doing. They don't know what level of their practice they're on. They don't connect their guru to their local authorities in any practical form. And they just think, well, I'm initiated. I got my beads. I chant Hare Krishna. I can do whatever I want, and I'm okay. No, you're not okay. Because it leads to the fourth one. One must receive instructions from the spiritual master and make inquiries in order to learn devotional service. So we have this attitude among disciples now that I don't need any instructions, or I can get my instructions in a general way, but specifically, there's no need. And I'm speaking in terms of percentages now. I'm saying there is a large percentage, and this is all over the movement, not just in my particular thing, is that disciples don't connect with their spiritual master, or if they do connect, it is just official. But here, number 4 is foundational to make further inquiries. One must hear the lectures given by the spiritual master and by those who are on the same level of the spiritual master. You might also say those who are one's Shiksha Guru, or in general, that is within the confines of Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and then ask questions. If you don't have any questions, that means you're all right and you know everything. And you don't need to go any farther because, and the second is you don't know what questions to ask, so you don't ask any questions. That means you don't read the books. If you don't have any questions to ask or no realizations on what is being said, it means you don't read the books. You don't read Srila Prabhupada's books. Or you don't regularly hear transcendental knowledge. Of course, the third one is that, well, everything is clear. I understand what's being said. I can practically apply this knowledge in my life, and I'm doing that. And therefore, I'm somewhat okay in spiritual life. But that is a little bit risky to have that mentality, because material energy is very, very strong. We think we're okay, but we're not, because as Prabhupada used to say, and he was referring to Western disciples, but it's now extended itself out in a larger sense. He would say, the problem with you Western disciples, you don't fear Maya enough. You have to have a healthy fear of Maya, because Maya she's powerful and she's intelligent. She's a pure devotee of the Lord, and her job and her service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to put obstacles in the face of the disciple in order for that disciple to further make progress in devotional service. So Maya will give us obstacles. She will even enter into our consciousness and dictate certain things about devotional service that are actually not devotional service. Maya is very subtle. Maya is very, very hard to evaluate many times. So in relationship to number 4, any doubts or any questions that one has in devotion. So of course, you may also get those doubts and those questions clarified by senior devotees in your area. And if you do that, that is considered to be acceptable, because as long as you know that these answers that are being given are going to help you overcome the obstacles, the doubts, the hesitations, the lethargic attitude that may come up in devotional life. which it does from time to time. So that is fine. But one has to be actively concerned about whether I'm making advancement or not. Not what I'm doing all the time. That's important. That's very important. But actually, am I developing my relationship with Krishna? If I've been practicing for 20 years and I don't have much of a relationship with Krishna, I don't know hardly anything about him, then what am I doing all those 20 years? So one must be enthusiastic to learn about Krishna, to learn about the process of devotional service, to remove the blocks, the doubts, the hesitations, the obstacles presented by Maya or presented by just in contact with the external energy. So number 4 is very important. And you have to understand these are regulative principles. They're not just a list of things that you can choose from. These are the 64 regulative principles. And Krishna in the 15th chapter, Krishna in the 19th chapter of the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam lists, speaks about these 64 items, but he condenses them down into 15. He says that he pretty much takes all 64 and combines them into 15 major principles. And one of them is regularly connecting with and hearing from and inquiring from the bona fide spiritual master. And then, excuse me. Number 5, one must follow in the footsteps of the previous acharya and follow directions given by the spiritual master. Both of those statements in that 5th point are similar. Previous acharyas means following in the cyclic succession. If one is carefully following the instructions given by the spiritual master, generally they're following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Because the present spiritual master is the person who represents the previous acharyas. And therefore, from hearing from him, we are actually getting that knowledge coming through to the cyclic succession. But in our movement, it's fundamental and required to hear from Srila Prabhupada, because he has established not only the philosophical teachings by which we understand the process of devotional service, but he has set the process in a certain way. Each guru may give a slight different angle on how to execute devotional service. And sometimes these angles are not slight, they're actually quite broad in their differences. So in order to stay chaste to the previous acharyas coming into cyclic succession, the founder acharya, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, has set the foundation. And all of those who follow him as spiritual masters must be his representatives 100%. They can't really concoct anything, or they can't really try to speculate and come up with their own ideas based on what Srila Prabhupada said. So this last one is it's called sadhu vritti. It's here is mentioned sadhu marg, and in other places called sadhu vritti, following in the footsteps, following the transcendental devotional service from the great spiritual masters. So devotional service is easy when we follow it. When we don't follow it, we try it. It's just like if somebody gives you a recipe to cook something, and the recipe has been proven to be successful and ideal, but you want to somehow add an extra spice or maybe remove one of the main spices, then you're gonna get something different, and it won't be up to the ideal. So in the same way, devotional service is easy if we follow these 5 principles here. It becomes very, very easy, because the spiritual master by nature, as Prabhupada said, is very kind, He's always trying to help those who are coming to him for devotional service. But those who don't come, who think they know better or don't feel that it's not necessary to inquire any further, they will be captured by the material energy. There's no doubt about that. Material energy is very, very strong. So you might say, well, what about my spiritual master is no longer personally present? But then we have His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, and we also have the assembly of his disciples who are also in the position. So we should regularly hear from Prabhupada and ask questions based on Srila Prabhupada's teachings from one of Srila Prabhupada's enlightened followers. That's important. The material energy is very, very, what's the word? Subtle. Maya is so subtle, you can't even see her. She makes Krishna look like Maya, and she makes Maya look like Krishna. That's the material energy. All right. I think where we are now in this particular chapter is that the following verses are going to list all 64 items. So in this first translation, Rupa Goswami establishes the path of devotional service foremost by establishing the first step in devotional service, connection with and the development with Krishna in the form of the spiritual master. Okay, let me see, what is our time here? We're right at the half hour now. I must apologize, my voice is a little hoarse. I seem to have connected with something that I shouldn't have connected with. But anyway, it's not serious. So we'll stop here and we'll open it up for questions. I could speak more, but I think the questions and answers based on this principle of guru-disciple relationship is actually a very broad topic. So I would encourage devotees to expand the category in different ways and see what are some of the aspects that you think is important, or you need to hear some clarification on it. And then we can go deeper into this, because Guru Tattva and relationship with disciple is actually the whole process of Krishna consciousness.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for the very nice class. Thank you so much. Dear devotees, if you have any questions or comments or realizations, as Guru Maharaj said, if you want to participate in a discussion, please go ahead. I see Radha Bhakti Mataji raised her hand.
We ask devotees to become visible.
Please, please turn on your camera if possible.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for Hare Krishna. I'm sorry to see that you might be a little bit struggling with your voice. Hope you feel better soon. Guru Maharaj, I had a question about, we're told that the guru comes back life after life to reclaim the soul who has taken, the sincere soul who has taken shelter of the guru. Can you explain a little bit how that works practically? Does that literally mean that the guru has to take birth again if the devotee doesn't reach perfection and has to come back? Or does he come back in a different way?
Both of those answers that you gave in reference to your questions are correct. Both of them can happen simultaneously also. And Srila Prabhupada has made the statement. He said, please don't make me come back again. That's what he said. So he didn't give much clarification on that, but then he's also emphasized the importance that as long as the disciple follows very strictly, and even if it doesn't become pure or they haven't reached perfection, then that is fine. And then then the spiritual master, and then we have the example. I'll turn to this example because I think it's one of the most powerful examples. It's the story of Bilvamangala Thakur, wherein he was quite licentious, and he was chasing after one particular high-class prostitute named Chintamani. She had a very nice establishment, but he was living on the other side of the river. And in order for him to go see Chintamani, he would have to cross the river. So one particular night, and this was interesting because he had just done the last rites for his deceased father, and now he wanted to go see Chintamani. So when he got to the banks of the river, a torrential rainstorm began, and all the boatmen left. So there was no boats to carry him across. Let's see here.
Can you start?
Can you?
Because then it hits a loop here, like.
Oh, okay. How's that?
Is it okay?
They're not responding.
Yes, Marge, we can hear
Yes,
you well now.
yes.
It's good.
Okay. All right. And so, therefore, he was thinking, I have to go see Chintamani. So, in this torrential rainstorm, he dove into the river to try to swim across, and it was quite difficult for him to deal with the waves and the water. But he took help from a dead body and somehow floated across. I got to the other shore. He was drenched. Found Chintamani's place. And then she had closed her doors because she was thinking no one's coming on this night. But he decided to climb the wall. Prabhupada describes this pastime. And he was climbing the wall to get over the compound where she was. And he thought it was a vine, but he grabbed onto a snake and he almost died getting bitten by a snake. But somehow he managed to get free. He got over the wall, and now you could imagine his physical state of affairs, having to cross this river, almost being bitten by a snake. He's soaking wet. It's late at night. He comes, and he practically falls on the ground in front of Chintamani. She looks at him, and she's really shocked, amazed that anyone would come. And then she spoke something, and what she spoke wasn't her. It was his spiritual master from the previous life who spoke through Chintamani to awaken him to the reality of his foolishness. And Chintamani said, if you had as much attraction to this body as you do to Krishna, then your life would be perfect. The voice came in such a way, went right to his heart and awakened him with the realization of how foolish and how much he has been diverted away from the real goal of life. And then, of course, he left, and then he went on to South India, and eventually he got to Vrindavan, and that's the whole story. There were many other episodes that he had encountered to get there. But he writes in his, what is that particular treatise he wrote? Was Brahma Samhita and Caitanya-caritamrta. That's right, Caitanya-caritamrta. he writes in the very beginning, he offers his respect to three spiritual masters: to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to Chintamani, who became his Shiksha Guru, and to Somagiri. Somagiri was his spiritual master in his previous life. And he heard the voice of Somagiri coming through Chintamani. So there's the example of how the spiritual master may use a situation in the next life of a devotee to somehow or other bring that person to a higher stage of surrender, to a more complete understanding of the practice of devotional service. So it can happen both ways. It can either come back directly, as Prabhupada mentions, in relationship to the question that came to him, or the spiritual master can use the facilities that are present in the life of the devotee to somehow or other enlighten him and bring that person back to Krishna consciousness. So I think from what I hear from both of these particular arguments, and there are more arguments also based on both of these similar but different principles of enlightenment, that both are validated and not just one. So I think we can accept both. Now, it depends on the situation, depends on the spiritual master, depends on what Krishna wants to do in this situation.
Thank you very much.
Does that seem clear enough?
Yes, very. Thank you.
Okay, good. And that's the ideal pastime that we get this information with. Somagiri was the actual spiritual master of Bilamangala Thakur in his last life. Chintamani was just the medium by which Somagiri
Sridevi Mataji, you have raised your hand.
Thank you. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you, Guru Maharaj. Sorry to hear you have such a bad cold. I hope someone is making the tea for you and you're getting proper care. I'm a little concerned about this. However, my question is different. My question is about, we are encouraged and we know we must write to the spiritual master, we must make inquiries, we must clarify our doubts. But what if we are thinking, my doubts are so silly and so mundane, how can I bother my spiritual master with such nonsense, that's coming out of my head, even though it may be distressing to me. From the point of the view of the spiritual master, it may be very mundane or very silly, and then we feel hesitant at wasting the spiritual master's valuable time by coming up with our nonsense. And we may just withdraw from asking questions because we don't want to bother the spiritual master like that. And we may also feel ashamed of asking certain questions, thinking, what will my spiritual master think of me if I present all this ugly side of me to him? So we may just muddle along and just try our best in bhakti, chant our rounds and pray for purification to happen like that, through the holy name. But we may not really have the daring to open up and ask these questions. So I'm just wondering what is to be done like in such a situation.
Well, there's a number of answers that could be applied. Can you hear me?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
Yes, very clearly.
I'm getting Hare Krishna.
I think at this time there is a message that comes here, right?
Mr. Prabhu, please disconnect Guru Maharaj's audio from the
Yes,
computer.
there's some message pop up and just click cancel on it. I think this is bad.
Okay. Are we back?
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, so yeah, this is a question that comes into the minds of devotees a lot. And sometimes they make the right decision and sometimes they don't. In other words, sometimes they err on the side of, well, why bother the spiritual master? Or the other side is they think, well, it's not so important, I can solve it myself. That's another way to really rationalize why not to answer or why not to ask. And then there are reasons why you shouldn't ask. And one of them would be that we have sadhu sangha, we have association with devotees in our local area. So when these doubts come whether we should ask the spiritual master or not, we could first go to the local devotees, see who is senior in our area or someone we can feel that is trustworthy and is competent enough to hear our questions or concerns. And if something satisfactory comes from that, then there's no need to contact spiritual master. And so I think can be approached in a step-by-step formula wherein you can see if you're not satisfied with what you hear from local devotees, you can then go to the spiritual master. But the spiritual master's service is many. Sometimes we say, well, he has projects, he does writing, he does this, he travels. And this has to be clarified because the main service of the spiritual master is to make sure that his disciples are getting everything they need to make advancement in devotional service. That's his main service. So that's his concern. So we shouldn't minimize that by thinking, well, I'm bothering him or I'm, whatever reason we'll come up with for not saying things. But then again, we should evaluate what is my situation. I mean, I've seen both sides where important issues don't come to the spiritual master, and later on the disciple struggles and tries to solve it himself. And then I've seen there are persons who like to ask questions all the time, no matter what comes up in their mind, to the spiritual master. And a lot of it they could easily solve themselves. Some of them are practical questions. Some of them can be just, they don't need to go to the spiritual master. So yeah, there's a nice article. I have to find it. It's somewhere on my computer. It's written by Caitanya-caritamrta Maharaja. Talks about 3 kinds of disciples, using the analogy of 3 different species in the animal kingdoms: the turtle, the fish, and the bird. And each one has a different way of getting what they need. And using the mood of each one of those animals, we could categorize devotees into one of the 3 categories. It's quite an interesting article. And Maharaj has also just written a book called Guru Disciple. It's a nice little book. It's not very big. It's maybe more like a pocket book. And he covers many of the interesting statements that we could discuss for hours that are important in that relationship. So I think you have to use your discrimination and see how important it is, whether I could get it solved without going to the spiritual master or not. And once you make your decision, then you move in that direction. And if you decide not to go and you don't find the satisfactory answers you need for your problems from the devotees in your area, then no doubt you can go to the spiritual master.
Okay, Guru Maharaj, thank you very much.
But I do find communication systems are different. Just like personal interaction is the most effective and complete. Second is what we're doing now through these Zoom calls. The third is emails, or maybe third is phones, and fourth is emails. When we try to present questions by email and get answers by emails, I feel that particular system is lacking in giving the clarification that is needed in presenting the problems. We don't say everything in that we want to say in the email, nor do the emotions of that concern come out so clearly in the email. And a lot of times things are never completely understood in terms of the answers. So I prefer talking directly with the disciple, or if that's not possible, by Zoom. If that's not possible, by phone, like that. We have Radha Vinodini.
Yes, ma'am. Radha Vinodini Mataji.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to you. Thank you very much. This is really such a relevant topic, and all these questions just led me to one more question. That you also mentioned that we can turn to local mentors. And I once experienced this, that the mentor set some kind of different principle than which later you said. And I became a bit confused because I really trust that mentor. But when the local mentor says something different from the guru, I suppose I should accept what the guru says, but I cannot all the time know it. So my trust a little bit weakened.
When that doubt is there, if you have that doubt from hearing from these other devotees, then you clarify that doubt by asking your spiritual master. That's all. Get the clarification. If there's the slightest doubt that there is something different or something additional that doesn't seem to fit into the answer, or you've heard different from your spiritual master, then you can ask, clarify.
Okay. Yeah, it really needs some intelligence because I really have to know when I should doubt. But yeah, that's why we have to hear. So thank you.
Yeah, we're in a particular dynamic that is quite unique. The guru and disciple is not in the same area, and that is not traditional. That is just the modern arrangement due to the worldwide movement. Generally, we don't see many worldwide movements come after hundreds and hundreds of years, generally. But our movement was worldwide from the very beginning. So usually it starts in one country with gurus and then followers, and then gradually after some time, as decades go on, sometimes centuries, it may spread out to something area, but it doesn't, just like Christianity spread slowly, but once it spread fast. So usually it's a cultural, and it's a more direct connection with guru disciple, but not in our society. It's very through various forms of media.
And Guru Maharaj, may I ask how it worked out in previous ages? Because as I read, there were many occasions, even in previous ages, that when the disciple didn't meet with the guru that often, and in that time there wasn't any online possibilities. So I really wondered how it worked out.
I don't know. I can't really say what happened. But whether that was due to situations or it was due to a purposeful arrangement, I don't know.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Well,
Yes, now, Rishabh Prabhu, you had raised your hand previously. Do you want to go ahead and ask question?
Rishabh Dev had his hand up, right?
Hare Krishna. Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances downstairs from the kitchen. I really liked one thing that you that you ask about spiritual master doesn't.
I got a localized disciple right here, so it's not a problem. I'm always on his case to make sure he's got things the way they should be.
I pray to finally start doing them as well.
I also pray much harder than you do.
Thank you, Maharaj. I really like your comment about spiritual master doesn't add anything to the process. And we see that in Kali Yuga, people are really much disturbed. Really much mind are very much disturbed, and I see when my mind is disturbed, it's so hard to serve you, and it's so many flaws, and it just I just feel that I am making so much insults in the process, and the advancement is very slow. So I did see that some spiritual masters, they even did some kind of a pre-phase of devotional service, like some kind of a emotional treatments or psychological help or any other treatments that kind of helps people just to calm the mind before actually starting the process that Srila Prabhupada gave us. Is this deviation, or is this something that is necessary maybe for how Kali Yuga is progressing, that we need to prepare the devotees to start practicing?
That's that was implemented in terms of the bhakti system, where a new person coming in would get training and education by the temple or by the yatra, and then gradually they would start to learn. It's not immediately that one connects with the spiritual master, but in some cases it does happen. It's not, we call it the bhakti program, the training program. I remember when I joined in New York in 1973, I wasn't allowed to live in the temple. They had a house just right next to the temple. It was called the Bhakti House, and they had a Bhakti leader there. Gopi Janavalabha, his name was, I still remember. And we would live there and do service, and he would guide us and teach us and correct us. So that went on, and some temples have a period that one has to perform this bhakti training before they actually reach the next stage of actually living in the temple. Or for those in the Grihastha community, it's incumbent upon them to take time to come to programs at the temple, seminars, and learn the process. The advantage of living outside and being in the Grihastha ashram is that you can learn from other senior Grihasthas. And that is important to connect with other families in the area who have been practicing for years and who know the standard, who know the etiquette, and learn from them. But the point is, you have to find some system where you can get that knowledge you need. And it's mostly about etiquette. It's mostly about etiquette. I find devotees are a little bit amiss when it comes to etiquette. They don't really understand what is etiquette. And we have books on etiquette. Satsvarup Maharaj and Bhakti Charu Maharaj, both of them extensively preached and wrote about etiquette. So that's very foundational to the execution of devotional service. When you know the etiquette, even if you don't know so much about the philosophy or don't know so much about how to execute your service, that etiquette will carry you through and make it easy for you to learn. Etiquette means behavior. So that's what the Bhakti program is about, mostly teaching proper behavior.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's really clear now.
Okay, thank you.
Krishna, Sridevi Mataji, you want to ask another question?
Yes, thank you, Srimati. Guru Maharaj, you very correctly pointed out that we are living in a very difficult situation where we are not in a Gurukul living with our spiritual master, with senior devotees, and learning from senior devotees. In the system, it was like that. The older, senior, advanced devotees would be there to teach the younger ones how to behave, how to serve the master, how to see what the spiritual master is giving you is real transcendental knowledge. The atmosphere is so vitiated today that we are, so polluted by what is happening in the world. Personally, for myself, I have to say this, I really struggle with trying to understand that my spiritual master is really, really a mercy manifestation of Krishna. I must treat the spiritual master with awe and reverence and follow the instructions, but my mind will not allow me sometimes behave in the proper way or even to think in the proper way and serve in the proper way. So how we can really see the Guru in the right way and serve the Guru nicely?
Well, that's a learning process. There's no formula for that. Otherwise, you should observe, you should hear, you should associate, and you should learn through these three mediums. By observing, by hearing, by associating, and by learning. And as you learn, you overcome these so-called doubts or situations where you cannot understand how to act or not act. It's a process. You have to understand it's a process. It's not about reaching perfection simply by one's wanting to be perfect. It's a process. The most important thing is to hear regularly. That's the most important thing. For instance,
yes. Sorry.
Yeah, for instance, there are many senior devotees, and I do this also. I listen to Prabhupada's same lecture over and over again. It's not that I'm so interested in going from one lecture to another. Sometimes I do that. but just recently, I'll give you an example, just to give you an example using my own self. I listened to all of Srila Prabhupada's classes on the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then I went back over and heard the first canto again. I mean, it was a lot. It was about, I don't know, more than 100 classes. And then I went back, and then I listened to the second canto, and then I finished that. And I'm listening to the third canto. Now I'm listening to the third canto for the second time. So you remember certain things that you hear when you hear the lectures again, but then there's things you don't remember, or you don't remember hearing. And so repetition is a feature of learning. And I make that as an emphasis. He is here over and over again.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. My humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna. You look like it's cold there.
Yeah, it is cold. It is quite cold, actually. I didn't expect it, but it is.
Yeah, another 2 weeks will be warm.
Right.
So now you've joined Namarata and two late night participants here. She's not alone anymore.
10:35 p.m. in the night here.
That's serious. That shows you're serious. That's good.
I better be serious, Guru Maharaj.
Guru Maharaj, we have a question on chat. Shriji Sundari Mataji, she is asking a question. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavats, hope and pray that you get well soon. In current ISKCON, there are many guru who are unable to give personal association. The disciples are trained to go to mentors and senior god brother or god sister or Prabhupada disciples. How do we understand this?
Yeah. Well, this is a phenomenon that's just a reality. How much can sometimes a spiritual master do? Sometimes because of health reasons, sometimes because of so many responsibilities that the spiritual master has, or as Lord Chaitanya warns that, and this is mentioned in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, a spiritual master should not take on too many disciples. Now, then the question comes, what is too many? And then the answer would be how much you can manage nicely. But then again, we have Kali Yuga where people are suffering and they're looking for gurus. So the solution to that problem is more gurus in ISKCON. And yes, that would Prabhupada's solution was, yeah, we want more and more persons coming up to the standard to take on that responsibility. So a particular spiritual master is not overburdened by too many disciples. It's a problem, yeah. There's no question about it.
Mataji, hope that answers your question. Yeah, she's saying, thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, and then again, see if you can find the answers with someone who is on the level of your spiritual master. You can also find that outlet there. Well, I think we discussed that. Okay, I think we reached the conclusion.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. I don't see any hands raised or devotees.
Okay.
Anybody have any more questions or comments? Last minute.
Okay, tomorrow we'll be with the devotees in Charlotte.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Tomorrow class will be at 12:10 p.m. UK time with Bhakti Sangha Japa group Charlotte devotees.
Do you have the verse handy?
Verse number is, I'm guessing she didn't send me any till Guru Maharaj, but it's they are doing 5th canto 18th chapter. The verse might be 5.18.12.
Oh, really? 5:18:12. Wow, that's a nice verse. I hope I get that one. Wow. That's a beautiful verse. 5:18:12. That's a landmark verse. Okay, so yeah.
Thank you so
I
much.
hope you're right. If you're not right, I'm going to be unhappy, but I hope you're right.
Yeah, because they covered 11 today. So that's what I'm guessing. Tomorrow it will be 12 only. So.
Yeah, she usually sends me on my WhatsApp, but I didn't get anything. So maybe let's see.
I will ask her and I'll message you, Guru Maharaj.
Good. Thank you very much, Srimati, for hosting so nicely. And thank you to all the devotees for coming and listening. Yeah, this is, Sadhu Sangha and Shravanam Kirtanam are the foundation by which we become inspired in our Krishna consciousness.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for your time and association. It's been long we heard from you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back into the groove again. Let's see. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for your mercy, Guru Maharaj. We are so grateful to you. Please get well soon.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. It's just a cold, that's all. I hope it doesn't get any worse. It's just a cold.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you for the lovely.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Harival, Nimeta, Nandini.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Maharaj, we feel